Well, good morning. We'll go ahead and start with the case count. So this morning we have 740 new positive cases in Iowa for a total of 7,885 positive cases. 85% of today's positive cases are from the 22 counties where restrictions remain in place. 516 of the 740 new positive cases are from Black Hawk, Dallas, Polk, and Woodbury counties. I am sorry to report that we have had another 8 Iowans who have passed away due to COVID-19. Deaths continue to be among older adults and those with underlying health conditions. We did have 2,186 new negative cases for a total of 37,708. We have had 45,593 total tests conducted in Iowa, and that's equates to a per capita rate of 1 in every 69 Iowans have been tested. 2,899 Iowans are now recovered for a recovery rate of 37%. As we've discussed throughout the week, we significantly expanded testing in Iowa. And in the last week alone, we have deployed strike teams and sent tests to long-term care facilities, manufacturing facilities, and the Iowa Veterans Home so that essential workers could be tested. We opened Test Iowa sites in Des Moines and Waterloo, and this has generated a high volume of tests coming into the state hygienic lab in a short amount of time. While tests are being processed and individuals notified of their test results as timely as possible, there is a backlog in the data entry process, which is how we get our daily numbers for reporting. This is being addressed, and it will be caught up this weekend. I want to assure Iowans that this is a short-term issue while the lab is transitioning to accommodate not only a higher volume of tests on an ongoing basis, but as they work through the validation of the Test Iowa process. As with any new test, validation is a normal process of that process, and it takes time, and this is causing some delay in the Test Iowa results. For Iowans who are still waiting for the results, we are sorry for the delay, but you will receive your results this weekend. I also want Iowans to know that because of the large number of tests we've conducted recently, we do anticipate the overall numbers that will be reported this weekend. They may be higher than usual, as we've seen in today's numbers. So please keep in mind that a high volume of tests conducted this week were among essential workers in communities or facilities where virus activity is high. By working with these businesses and their employees to provide access to surveillance testing, we have an opportunity to identify and isolate positive cases, conduct case investigations to track the virus so that we can contain, manage, and then really understand the scope of it. And it does provide some reassurance to the employees. These additional tools are critical as we move into the next phase of COVID-19 and reopening up our state. So after 8 weeks of uncertainty, Iowans will begin taking some familiar steps forward. Today, in 77 counties with low or no virus activity, restaurants, fitness centers, retail stores, and closed malls may reopen at 50% of normal operating capacity according to specific requirements or protocols designed to protect workers, customers, and communities. In all cases, businesses must ensure social distancing, increased hygiene practices, and other preventive measures that are consistent with guidance from the Department of Public Health. And across all counties, churches, synagogues, and other houses of worship may choose to reopen for religious services. In times like these, it's our faith that gives so many of us the strength that we need. And I've been very impressed with how religious communities have remained connected even while they're apart. So whether you've joined your own church through online over the last several weeks or live stream services from across the globe, there's been no shortage of opportunities to gather virtually in prayer. Still, many Iowans are eager to return to church, and over the last week, I've heard from a number of religious leaders across the state. And while they're grateful for the opportunity to come back together with their members, they're also aware of the importance to do so in a safe and responsible way. Many churches intend to take some extra time to assess and change their physical space and adapt their services as necessary to protect the health and safety of their members. I appreciate the thoughtful approach of these decisions and also the thoughtful approach of those who choose to hold services this weekend. In anticipation of returning to church, whether it's this week or in the coming weeks, I thought it might be helpful for Iowans to know more about the guidance for spiritual and religious gatherings during this time, and I've asked Sarah from the Department of Public Health to provide an overview. Sarah?
Thank you, Governor Reynolds, and good morning. While many social gatherings are still limited and entertainment venues are closed, starting today, Iowans may once again gather for spiritual or religious purposes. The Governor's April 27th proclamation provides that churches, synagogues, or other hosts of spiritual or religious gatherings that do wish to resume in-person services must take special measures to ensure the health of congregants. The Iowa Department of Public Health has developed guidance to help them do this. It's available at coronavirus.iowa.gov at the top of the webpage. Places of worship must ensure social distancing of employees and congregants. Hand washing and hand sanitizing supplies should be readily available, and thorough cleaning should be conducted on a regular basis, especially for high-touch surfaces like door handles and armrests. We encourage the continuation of remote audio or video services for high-risk Iowans and others who choose to stay home but still wish to engage with their religious community. Smaller in-person services or outdoor services can also be considered. Some churches are even offering drive-in services to continue efforts to slow the spread of the virus. All congregants should consider wearing face coverings such as cloth face masks or face shields, and those in high-risk categories should refrain from attending services since we know the virus is still spreading in some of our communities. With the announcement that places of worship can reopen, we've been getting questions about what is considered a worship or religious service. Weddings and funerals are considered a worship or religious service, but funeral visitations and wedding receptions are not. Visitations and receptions must continue to be limited to 10 people or fewer. Iowans at high risk for more severe illness should continue to avoid these sorts of gatherings. And as Governor Reynolds has said, we are all working to adjust to what life with COVID-19 will be like as we move through this pandemic. We know this is a difficult time, and Iowans need to continue to be responsible in taking care of their own health as well as protecting the health of our communities. If you do choose to attend a worship service this weekend, please continue to do all of the things that public health has been asking of Iowans. Continue to practice social distancing. Consider the use of cloth face coverings if you will be in situations where social distancing is not possible. Wash your hands and use hand sanitizer regularly. And most importantly, stay home if you are not feeling well or if you have been diagnosed or in close contact with anyone who has been diagnosed with COVID-19. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Governor.
Thank you, Sarah, and I greatly appreciate again the work that the Department of Public Health continues to do to keep Iowans safe and healthy, especially as we begin to ease some of the restrictions and take those first steps to get life back to normal while learning how to manage COVID-19. So pastors, priests, rabbis, and other religious leaders are now determining how best to move forward to provide their members with spiritual guidance during this challenging time. Today I've invited Greg Baker with the Family Leader to share what he's heard from pastors across the state as they prepare to bring Iowans back to church. So Greg, thank you for joining me today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Governor. Really appreciate you giving us the opportunity just to share what churches are doing all across Iowa. My name's Greg Baker. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Family Leader. And I'm blessed to be able to work with churches across this state. And my main part of my responsibility is leading our Church Ambassador Network. For 6 years, we've been working with churches to develop relationships with our elected officials, bring together the shepherds of the church, pastors, and shepherds of government elected authorities with the purpose to build a relationship as a person, as a shepherd, and as a partner in meeting community needs. And this COVID-19 crisis has shown just the need for that partnership, for these two institutions to be able to continue to connect with each other. Governor, I want to thank you for recognizing the church's autonomy and its First Amendment rights. And I want you to know, Governor, that we do not take those rights lightly. We also want to encourage Iowans that as well. Freedom comes with great responsibility. As Americans, we understand this when we look at our Bill of Rights. Incredible opportunities, but great responsibilities. When we look at churches across the state, the attitude we are seeing is the attitude of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. We are his ambassadors. And Jesus came to not be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom to many. And that is exactly the heart we are seeing. Immediately, Governor, when you issued the proclamation on Monday, we went to work with churches across Iowa to make guidelines to ensure that as churches look to reopen, that we do so wisely, with not only the members' best interest in mind, but also the community at heart. Most churches will be continuing online church services for the next few weeks, particularly in the 22 counties where we've seen the outbreak most severe. Churches like Lutheran Church of Hope will not only be continuing online services, the Lutheran Church of Hope in West Des Moines will also be assessing their entire facilities to see how we can move beyond just using auditorium space and taking advantage of all square footage. A lot of churches, as I said earlier, will be continuing parking lot church services that the Iowa Department of Public Health issued guidelines on several weeks ago. Faith Christian Outreach Church Center in Mount Pleasant has started this several weeks ago and will be continuing these services for the weeks to come. Churches have also been taking advantage of small gatherings. As we know, connection in Iowa is important, and so is it in the church, whether that be through virtual small community group gatherings or gathering in groups of 10 people or less. Praise Community Church in Mason City has been ensuring that these small group encouragement gatherings have been continuing. We know a very limited number of churches that are looking to gather in person as they want to move about this slowly and wisely, as many businesses are across this state. But more importantly, Governor and Iowans, we wanted to step in to take care of community needs during this crisis. Jesus came to serve, and we want to serve as well. Whether that be the need for PPE production, churches like New Hope Christian Church and Faith Assembly of God in Marshalltown are making face masks. Whether it be the growing need of food insecurity in our state, 58 churches led by Al Perez have been working together with the Food Bank of Iowa and the Des Moines Area Religious Council in the Des Moines metropolitan area. Churches like Westchester E. Free and Cottage Grove are holding distribution sites for the growing need of Iowans for food. In Cedar Rapids, First Assembly of God has partnered with the Convoy of Hope to distribute over 35,000 pounds of food to Iowans in need. When a communication came out from the governor's office that we needed more blood drives across the state of Iowa, 21 churches stepped up immediately and said that they were willing to host a blood drive. Coram Deo in Davenport was one of the first to do so. With the growing need of seniors staying at home, that has not only included seniors in the need of meal delivery, but also the many seniors who volunteered to deliver those meals. North Point Church in Johnson, Walnut Creek Church in Des Moines has stepped in to help replace some of those volunteers so they can stay home safely. And this is just a small sampling of what many churches are doing across the state of Iowa. And what we are hearing and what we encourage is churches will not only continue to operate responsibly in their communities, but they'll also continue to display the love of Christ by coming alongside their neighbors. Thank you so much, Governor, and it is an honor to serve here in this state with you.
Thank you, Greg, for everything that you're doing to help make the transition as smooth as possible, and for the partnership and for all you're doing through the churches across the state to meet the needs of Iowans in various communities across the state in these really difficult times. So I want to thank all religious leaders for their thoughtful, responsible approach, and I respect the decisions and I wish you well. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. We did also receive some good news yesterday. Homeland Security and Emergency and Management was notified that Iowa did qualify for the Crisis Counseling Assistance and Training Program through FEMA. This program assists individuals and communities in recovering from the effects of disasters through community-based outreach and short-term interventions that help people understand their current situation. It helps them manage their stress, develop coping skills, and provide emotional support. It also connects people with additional resources to assist with other aspects of the recovery process. COVID-19 has certainly taken a toll on Iowans, and these resources are important in helping us recover and helping Iowans move ahead in these really difficult times. The Department of Human Services is working now on a plan with the Homeland Security to implement the program, and I look forward to providing more information soon about how Iowans will be able to access these services. And with that, we'll open it up for questions.
With the launch of Test Iowa and mass testing going on in so many different places, why was the State Hygienic Lab not prepared for such an influx in tests?
Well, they are prepared, and as we've continued to see states, the ramp-up process, that also includes validation. And so we're working through that. They're addressing the number of tests that we're being able to implement across the state. Throughout the process, we've been ramping up, and this is the next step in being able to increase our testing capacity so that we can, really start the case investigation and tracing, isolate the cases, and do everything that we can to continue to manage and mitigate COVID-19 as we move into the next phase of reopening Iowa. So, they're working around the clock. I want to take this moment to thank the individuals at the State Hygienic Lab, not only with the increase in cases, and that was even before we brought on Test Iowa. We were seeing hospitals start to be able to conduct testing. We were seeing national labs come on board with different processes to test. We're seeing the number of cases increase. And so their team is working 3 shifts around the clock to get these tests processed and get the information to the individuals that are doing the case investigation and the contract tracing. Do you need to add to that? Okay.
Governor, how is the State Hygienic Lab or the public health trying to determine whether the tests for Test Iowa are accurate? You mentioned that they're working on that. Mm-hmm. Exactly what is that process? What does that look like? And does that contribute to the workload?
So, well, it's part of it, but I'll start in, and then I'm going to let Sarah maybe give some further details about it. But it's a similar process that we did when we started testing for COVID-19. We had to get our State Hygienic Lab process validated through CDC, correct? And so remember at the beginning we were saying we had to send the test out until we had a certain percentage that had been validated, and then after that process was validated, we were okay to start naming positive cases instead of waiting for that process to be verified at the CDC lab. So that's the process that they went through when we first started testing Iowans, and I think that was about a 5-day turnaround time as we were walking through that process. And so now what they'll do is they'll use the lab that has been certified to validate the new Test Iowa equipment. So we'll be able to use the State Hygienic Lab process to validate Test Iowa because they were validated through the CDC. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
I think the only thing that I would add is that this is common. Anytime a lab brings on, a new test or a new assay, a validation is part of that process. And so, as the governor explained, we did this when the CDC test kits first became available. You'll recall what the governor was referencing, the presumptive positives we talked about. We had presumptive positives. Those samples had to be sent to the CDC for validation. And so with the Test Iowa equipment, the State Hygienic Lab is still in the process of doing that validation of the equipment to make sure that it's up to the standards of the State Hygienic Lab.
And you mean sending
every national labs as well?
The national labs would have done that.
Yeah, every national lab, everybody, LabCorp, the national labs, the hospitals, when they come in and start, beginning the ability to process their own tests, they also have to go through a validation process. So this is not anything out of the ordinary. This is the process that you go through when you bring on a new opportunity.
Has there ever been any effort to track the people who asked for tests, like early on when we didn't have any supply? They may have even been symptomatic, but people were just told, well, stay home, if you're not an essential worker, you're not likely to get a test. Was there any effort to track those folks and maybe even circle back to them for possible serology or antibody testing?
I don't really know unless you
Yeah, Kathy, I mean, I think that would be in the realm of with somebody's individual healthcare provider. So, I mean, if they went to their healthcare provider and they didn't meet the criteria for testing and they were told that, test wasn't available and they needed to go home and stay home while they were feeling ill, it would be up to that individual to go back to their healthcare provider. And we've encouraged that all along. If your health deteriorates, you should always continue to seek care from your primary healthcare provider if you're not feeling well. And so the department hasn't tracked those. Those individuals wouldn't have necessarily come to, the attention of the Department of Public Health because they were engaging directly with their primary care provider. And so the advice to anybody that was in that situation that still might not be feeling well is you should always reach out to your primary care provider if you need health care.
Even with the Test Iowa, and we encourage them, if your symptoms change, to go back on and manage that. But on every page, it says if you're not feeling well, contact your physician and visit with them, walk through the assessment, and then if they deem necessary, you can go in. So this is just another option. It's not the only option. There's still a lot of options out there for Iowans to utilize to get tested.
We're going to go to Ron at KWWL. Ron, go ahead.
Good morning, Governor. Thank you for taking the call. You mentioned the delay in the test results. This question I have is really about someone just getting the test for someone who sounds like they probably should qualify. And this comes from an email from a wife in Cedar Falls who wrote, Ron, my husband works for a nursing home, was exposed to a known COVID positive person in very close contact as he had to transport this patient to the hospital. Then she writes, he filled out the governor's Iowa Testing Initiative form on the internet, answering yes to the exposure question, but the assessment said he does not qualify to be tested. I'm pretty sure she's watching here today. Can you kind of tell her why her husband would not qualify?
Well, I would
for this
encourage.
test
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for the question. I would encourage any Iowan out there, if you believe that you've been exposed or you have symptoms, call your physician. There are multiple ways that you can get a test. This is one tool in the toolbox to allow Iowans to go on, take the assessment, try to identify, who should get a test, and then make those available. But this is in addition to what we've already been doing. This is in addition to what our hospitals are doing and providing. So we have multiple opportunities across the state. So I would just encourage you to, and like it says even on the assessment at almost every page, if you're not feeling well, contact your physician and visit with them, and they will help make the determination too if you should come in and get a test. So, I would encourage you to go ahead and call your physician, walk through with them the symptoms that you're experiencing, and they hopefully would get you lined up to take a test.
Next question, David Pitt, Associated Press.
Yes, thank you. So, Governor, my question is about the validation testing. I guess I wonder what happens if I know you don't want to think about this, but what if the validation test fails? Is there a plan B?
Yeah.
The only reason I ask that is because I understand from media reports in India that test produced by this company and a business partner did fail India's national validation standard.
Oh, I don't think that that's accurate. We can follow up with you, David, afterwards. But, we're working closely with Dr. Bindella and the team at the State Hygienic Lab. As you just heard Sarah say and I say, this is part of the process. It is not unusual. I don't think at this point they feel that they're not going to be able to do it. It's just, this is the process that you go through to get the equipment validated. And so we have confidence that they're going to be able to get that done, just like they were able to do in Utah. We're doing it through the State Hygienic Lab, and so I'm confident that they'll be able to get that done. They're working, they're working on it. They're running the test, and they're learning as they go through. And so hopefully we'll be able to report out sooner rather than later when we have that validated.
All right, we're now going to go to Rachel, Channel 5.
Good morning, Governor. I have a couple questions. One, with the questions being raised about the validity of these tests, is it possible to get the Test Iowa results separated out on a daily basis? And then also, is the Test Iowa billing private insurance companies? And if not, why is that?
It's not, on to your last question. And the validation process from the beginning of this, because we have tests coming in for all over, once they're validated, the process is validated and they're good to go. So we have results coming in from labs, from the State Hygienic Lab, from hospitals that all come in, and we made the decision, not to separate them out. And so that's the process that we'll continue to operate under. But again, they have to they have to complete the validated process like everyone else, and once that's done, then we'll be able to be running them through the Test Iowa process, and then we'll report them together. Do you have anything to add to that, Sarah? No.
We'll try and get to 3 more questions. Rod, Cedar Rapids Gazette.
Thank you, Governor. I'd like to get an update from Sarah, if I could. I was finishing off a week that saw a sizable jump in the confirmed cases that's generally been attributed to more aggressive testing. Do the models and metrics point to this trend continuing for a while in May? And has it changed any of the projections for when the peak might occur in Iowa, given a good share of the state is starting to reopen today?
Yeah. Actually, it peaked according to that other website.
Thanks for your question, Ron. I mean, I think that we have anticipated all along that kind of the end of April, early May was going to be the time where we would see a peak of tests results in Iowa. And so, you know, I'm not going to say that we've seen the peak. Testing is still increasing. You know, we're doing surveillance testing, which means that we are identifying people who are positive in some of these situations that might not be experiencing any symptoms. And so we're going to continue to offer that support to businesses, long-term care facilities across the state. So I don't necessarily at this point in time want to speculate that we've met our peak and that we're, you know, going in the other direction. Although I do think the IHME model this week indicated that we have met our peak. So, yeah. So you know, there are some people that think we're already there because of the increased testing that we're doing. I don't want to stand here today and tell you that we're not going to, you know, see increased case counts. I think, as the governor mentioned to you, we are going to see case counts continue to go up over the weekend as some of the results of these large testing initiatives continue to be reported. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll continue to give the best guidance that we can based on what's actually happening in our state.
Last question, we're going to go to actually Channel 13.
Good morning, Governor. With restaurants opening up today, I know you issued a lot of guidelines for how their operations will continue. Not a restaurant, but Costco, for example, company-wide, starting Monday, is mandating that customers wear masks.
Yep.
Are you considering suggesting that for Iowans who are going into restaurants?
Yeah.
Because even if an employee is wearing a mask, theoretically speaking, if a customer who is having direct interaction with that employee is asymptomatic and isn't protected, I mean, could that be a risk?
Well, you know, and I think some of that is in the guidelines, and we say to individuals, you know, we have to have personal responsibility. If you feel more comfortable going to a dine-in restaurant and you feel more comfortable to wear a face covering while you're there, then by all means do it, especially if you can't social distance. But remember, you know, they're at 50% capacity. They are supposed to, the tables have to be 6 feet apart. We're limited to the number in the party. So they're taking all kinds of precautions to make sure that when customers come in, not only are they safe and they have confidence in the restaurant, but they're protecting their workers as well. So, you know, we've got some protocols that are in place that allows them to open up. And then in addition to that, the Department of Public Health has put together some significant guidelines to help individuals and businesses as we start to kind of open things up in a very responsible and safe way and in a phased-in approach. So, you know, you continue, if you feel comfortable doing that, do that. And we'd also have, you know, some restaurants that are going to wait, too, for a little bit. So, again, businesses are making the decisions based on what they feel they are ready to do. So we're not seeing everybody, you know, open back up. We're seeing variations in that as well, just like we are seeing with some of our church families, too. So people are being responsible. They want to make sure that they're protecting their workers and the individuals that are coming in to their establishments, as well as making sure that they're protecting the community as well. So if we continue to all work together and really be mindful and thoughtful about how we move through this next phase of COVID-19, then we're going to continue, I believe, to continue to, in a very responsible manner, continue to open things up in the state of Iowa. So thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.